in an apocalyptic future where all cities and countries of the world were submerged under the depths of the oceans. A world where humanity was stagnant in time, and marine creatures flourished and ruled like never before in this new world. This is our protagonist, Bota, and his father, Tion. They survived by working as diving explorers, searching in the forgotten waste of ancient terrestrial civilizations. Today they had collected enough to fill a cart, so they returned to the surface of the sea. This was their boat, and she was the one belonging to the main character, Lita, who spent all her time on top of the boat, checking if they could find more people. Today, they had not seen anything either, and they were very far from other boats. But Tion had hoped to someday find a place where they could live in peace with his 2 children. They divided the tasks of the boat, and survived with everything they could find in the ocean. However, they had one absolute rule: they could never break it. When night fell, all the lights were turned off, and total silence was made so as not to attract the attention of the sea monsters, who always attacked at night when there was no sunlight. Therefore, Lita and Bota had never seen the stars in their entire lives. However, Tion was there to give his children love and security when they went to sleep. Bota asked his father where he came from, and he told him that the ocean was enormous and he came from a group of hunters called harpooners. They were incredible people who trained from a very young age to fight against the monsters of the ocean, and the tattoo that Tion had was proof of this. In fact, those 6 stars were a sign of the countless battles he had fought and won. Tion promised Bota that someday they would sleep in a safe place so he could see the beautiful night sky. When they set sail, the ship was a mess. The previous night was not an attack, but a warning. Still, Tion ignores it, and Bota tries to help, but ends up arguing with his father about why he can't go explore if he's already grown up. Lita interrupts them, yelling that there were seagulls, and further on they find these abandoned buildings. But he tells Bota that if something bad happens to him, he should turn the boat and run away. So he jumps into the water to reach the island and explore it, but all he finds are corpses. At that moment, Bota thought he saw a person drowning, and on the other hand Tion, while holding an old missile, understands that the people of that place had been attacked from the outside by the same thing that had attacked them the night before. And he immediately understands everything. He swims towards the children, but it was already too late. That monster had them in sight and it charges towards them, destroying the boat. The children and Tion are thrown into the ruins, barely holding on from the impact. Although Tion was injured, he tells them that there is no time. They must run and hide. Suddenly, the monster appears, and he realizes that the children are his own. The children are chased, but they manage to escape unharmed. However, this monster, Cam, is very intelligent and wants to eat our protagonist and Lita. He also plays with people's minds. That's how he manages to catch the protagonist. He was about to be devoured, but he is rescued by Tion, who tells him to hide. Tion begins to analyze Cam, and he realizes that this is a Leviathan. That's what they call enormous monsters, was the largest he had ever faced. He knew how to deal with one, but this was the most dangerous sea monster of the entire ocean. Not because of its size, but because of its intelligence. Despite this, Tion was a very skilled harpooner and manages to make several cuts on the monster. But Cam was not as slow as he seemed. Tion's sword was hurting him badly, and just as he was cutting him in the face, Cam's teeth managed to pierce him in one go. He looked at our Bota and remembered all the moments he lived with his children. He told Bota he loved him and entrusted him with taking care of Lita, taking the missile he picked up in the building. He smashed it on Cam's face and manages to blow monster in huge blasts. And that's how the story of Bota's and his sister Lita begins. The children stayed on the small island, and that same night Bota had a nightmare. But at dawn, his luck was improving. Now there were only the 2 of them and they had to move on. They had managed to find something to eat, and the next day, remembering how his father taught him to get water, he had managed to stock up on drinking water. Now they needed to explore and understand everything that was available on the island. When they reached the top floor, of course, they were scared, but they took everything they could. And when Bota saw another missile, he remembered his father and wondered if he could fight like him and protect his little sister. Honestly, it was uncertain if they could survive the night. After lighting the fire, the protagonist only thought that he needed to be brave if he wanted to survive here. He had to go to the water and learn to hunt. He also took his father's sword and, let's say, practiced with it to see how it felt. Lita told Bota that she had found something. It was a door leading to a basement. Bota arrived and was surprised to see a huge amount of fish, so he dived in to explore and confirmed that there was an incredible amount of fish. He already had water and food, and he was under the illusion that he could live here for a long time. However, his dreams were just below a nest of leviathans, and by the script's fate, They were being born right now, so the protagonist ran away to escape, but the Leviathan didn't want to let him go so easily. Even so, the protagonist managed to escape and put a lot of rocks at the entrance to stop the creatures. But he realized that Lita wasn't there when he got out. He shouted, and Lita asked Bota to saw something in the distance, like a person in the middle of the sea. She thought it was her father, but it was actually something much more dangerous. Lita sailed straight towards her father, but Bota remembered that the Leviathan used the same tricks to deceive people, and she had fallen into the night, and it was too late to return. So she climbed up to take refuge, but the baby Leviathans were already attacking, and the rubble wouldn't hold for long. Bota was starting to lose hope, but he remembered how his father entrusted Lita with his sword to defend her, even if it was the last thing he did. The rubble couldn't hold up any longer, but Bota managed to take down one and then jumped into the boat with his sister. So, taking advantage of the chaos as the babies were eating each other, the children had time to return to the island, but they hadn't escaped yet. Both run to the highest floor, and while Lita climbed up, Bota was cutting the stairs, and they managed to reach the top. But Bota was injured, and the hunt was not over. Monster caught Bota in its claws, but Lita managed to interfere, and now it was blind, but it could still smell Bota. He got its attention with some gasoline, and when it charges at them, it swallows the gasoline, and Bota sets it on fire. It seemed like it was over, but the missiles didn't go off. They made the place explode. Bota and Lita fell into the water, and the debris destroyed what was left of the nest. The children reached a platform to climb, but these creatures never stopped, and when it seemed like the end, luck finally came to their aid. She is Cona, an incredible hunter, one of the strongest in history, a 3-star hunter. She starts shooting the creatures with harpoons, killing most of them. One big creature was left with the ball and attacked her from behind, but she saves him, even though she was attacked from behind, and loses her secondary weapon. That's when she gets serious, cutting them all down in an instant, and the last ones left with the children are also finished by her. The protagonist didn't know what to think because even though they had been saved, his father always taught him to question and distrust strangers. But Cona tells him that they were very fortunate to find a fellow harpooner in the middle of the ocean, just like his father. She says she came from the Union Busan, and at the bottom they could see a huge ship, the Union Busan. Then a submarine emerges there from nowhere. This was the rest of the hunter team, and Bota was amazed to see so many people on a huge ship that nothing could bring down. Finally, they were saved, and the children would be taken to a shelter. Meanwhile, Cona gave orders for search and elimination since she was the captain of the team. At the bottom of the ocean, we are introduced to Dr. Foyd, who was amazed and saddened because Cona left nothing alive for him. However, not far from there, they found the body of very big sea monster Kent, one of the 7 ocean demons. In fact, the most terrifying due to its intelligence. Cona was shocked because she didn't know who had eliminated it, but she caught a glimpse of Pion's sword and wondered who those kids were. Now, the boys were being questioned, but the public official didn't believe they had been in the open sea for over 10 years. After all the suffering and pain, the protagonist remembered how his father helped them to survive in open sea. Although Kiko, as we'll call him, comforted them by saying that he would take care of their safety and paperwork. The protagonist asked Kiko about the harpoons, and he explained that harpoons are the ones who protect people from sea monster. Harpoonists mark the number of sea monster they have killed on fear bodies, and each star on fear bodies represented 100 sea monsters. Countless harpoonists die before they even earn a single star. That's why Cona was special, because she had 3 stars, so she was the heroine of the ship. The protagonist thought that his father, Tion, was super amazing because he had 6 stars. In other words, he killed at least 600 sea monster. Cona passed by and asked who those children were. She also spoke with Brun about Scutin, an unbreakable ultra crab sea monster that Brun thought was a legend, but for Cona, that Leviathan was everything she hated. When the children boarded the ship, Kiko told them they could stay there forever if they found a job and paid taxes. Both children were happy. But Kiko noticed that they didn't have shoes, which could cause disease if they walked without them. So, he took them to the market. On the way, Bota noticed that everyone worked hard in all kinds of jobs to survive. And finally, they arrived at the market. When they went to the shoe guy, the shoes were very expensive. Bota offered him a bottle of whiskey to exchange, but the kids realized that a bottle of alcohol is worth much more than a pair of shoes when it attracts the attention of all people around him. The kids managed to make a good amount of money by selling it in mini auction and walked to their new home. Kiko told them they couldn't trust anyone, and the only thing they could trust was money. Even though it was a dump, it was paradise for the kids. For the first time in their lives, the protagonist and Lita could see the stars. Meanwhile, Dr. Foyd was digging Sea Devil Kent corpse and telling Brun that humanity was ignorant about monsters till now, and as a scientist he have to research this for the good of everyone. Kent had to be his guinea pig to discover the reason for the monsters. On the other hand, Cona had checked Tion's sword and found that it was genuine, an original sword of the first 6-star legendary harpoonist. Seeing this, she concluded that the sword belonged to the ancient Leviathan hunter, the Tion Ma. There's going to be a bloodbath soon, therefore, the children should not be on the ship. Bota also could not sleep well. He still felt danger nearby. Even people told him that harpoonists with stars on their arms were protecting this place. We see Cona remembering and deducing that these children must be Tion's children, whom he sacrificed himself to protect. She shows us her past. It turns out that Cona was a refugee who lived in the open sea with her parents. They cleaned the ocean floor to survive, just like the protagonist, although they mainly collected junk that they sold to the Union Busan in exchange for their supplies and money. This enormous ship was the young Cona's dream because her life was not very comfortable. While her parents worked, she and her siblings explored the ocean floor. Due to the sea monsters, they only needed a treasure that was so valuable it would be worth the Union Busan citizenship for her and her parents. When that day finally came, they found something valuable, and she would live safely. But that same night, they were attacked by a Leviathan, one of the demon monsters. Everyone she knew and loved lost their lives. The survivors tried to ask for help from the Union Busan, but they refused. However, Tion listened to them, and when Cona was just about to die he saved her. Then he faced the Leviathan alone, determined and strong. He had nothing to protect or lose, fighting on the thin line between life and death. With his gas sword, he was able to pierce the monster's tough shell. Meanwhile, Cona couldn't believe her eyes. A miracle was happening. This man was a predator hunter, and despite the strength needed to control the sword's maximum power, he fought as if it was nothing. However, it depleted the sword's gas fuel. He managed to cut off one of the monster's legs, but that wasn't enough to make it leave. The monster was not stupid. It did everything possible to sink the boat and prevent anyone from escaping by throwing rubbles on boat. Additionally, monster was full of tricks, and due to this Cona was trapped under the debris, and she was severely injured. They managed to avoid causing him more harm, but it was not enough. The Tion had no more gas for his sword, and it was difficult to move with those injuries. However, when Tion was on the brink of losing fight, luck smiled upon them with the arrival of the sun, and the monster had no choice but to flee. They were able to rescue little Cona, but she was dead inside because her parents were eaten by a monster in front of him. The Union Busan members managed to rescue the relics, and Cona became a citizen. The harpooners were heroes in the Union Busan, but the people were very superficial. She knew that no one cared about the deceased people. They only cared to obtain the relics and remains of the Leviathans. One day, she overheard a soldier conversation. That refugees sent them signal on radio for help, but he declined their request. He did everything to get the relic practically for free. After hearing this, Cona enraged and tried to kill that soldier, but in the end he and the others only hurt and humiliated her, mocking her loss. At that moment Tion reached there and saved the girl by beating all soldier. Later he explained that the ship was dangerous. Here strong devour the weak, and she must have to become strong if she want to survive here. Cona asked him if she could join forces to destroy all the monsters in the ocean. That was how she was enlisted in the harpoonist forces, becoming what they are today. She was in debt to him and now had to protect his children no matter the cost. Another day came, and Bota had to find a job to pay his taxes. The money he obtained from the whiskey was running out quickly. It was hard to get a job since he was only 13 years old, and Lita was 9. Although he applied to several places, no one gave him a chance. While searching for a job, he see an old lady who was asking money from strangers to eat food. Then he exchanged some coins with Grandma for a couple of seeds. They asked for Kiko's help, who had influence, and he suggested one job to Bota. Although it was not the best job, it was a job in the lower area of the ship with the pipes. The boss was not convinced, but Bota was very convincing, so boss agreed to give him job. Kiko reminded him that the most important thing was money, and poverty was the most scariest thing on this ship. Union Busan might protect him from typhoons and sea monsters, but it does not protect him from poverty or diseases. On the first day, Bota had some small mishaps. He learned that the ship was over 100 years old, and the boss, Rong, had been working for 40 years. He told Bota about modern civilization and how everything changed one day. Huge ice comets collided with the moon, and all the debris fell on Earth in the form of rain. The sea level began to rise after 70 years of constant rain. Then they began to link ships together and it was named Union Busan, before everything was submerged under the sea. Bota realized that these were the people who truly worked hard to keep the ship afloat. He was determined to work with them to ensure the well-being of his sister and his ship. However, the ship began to sink as a pipe was clogged and not allowing water to flow. At this rate, the water would reach the machines, and problems arose. On the other side, Lita had already ordered and cleaned the room, but someone knocked on the door. She thought Bota is arrived and opened the door, but they are Sawlighters, who introduced himself as her father friends. The boss decided to go to fix the clogged pipe issue, but he couldn't fit in the pipes. Then Bota decided to go since he was the only one who fit inside the pipes. He jumped in and disobeyed, submerging himself in the water to fix the problem. When he reached a section where nothing made sense and was unmarked, he forgot where he entered. The boss knew this would happen, and with the boys, they started to hit the clogged pipe. Bota found and unclogged it, but something hit him and he lost the air he had. Additionally, the water's strength swept him away, and 8 minutes had passed. Bota was lost inside pipe tunnels, and eventually he ran out of air after 24 minutes. Nevertheless, he managed to return after 30 minutes. Everyone was happy, especially the boss, and finally, Bota had gotten a job. He ran to give the good news to Lita, but there was the idiot Dohu already waiting for him and launches a surprise attack on Bota. He couldn't believe that Tion's children were alive, much less under his control. He hit and tried to trick Bota into believing that Tion was a traitor who killed countless harpoonists from Union Busan. Well, he was, but he had a just cause. Now he wanted revenge on Bota and Lita, and before he seriously injured them, all the harpoonists were called for an emergency. The Union's crew was attacked by a species of monster tsunami. Dohu had to go, and now Bota and Lita weren't safe in the Union. Dohu gives them warning and locked the room. On the other hand, Cona led the attack of the harpoonists. Brune used mechanical fists that released an incredible amount of power and destroyed the monster fish with a single blow. He kept disposing of several monsters, but he noticed they were starting to excrete mucus. The torpedoes they used were useless. Before this man was devoured by the monsters, Cona pierced them with his swords. He would now test some synthetic pheromones made by Dr. Foyd, attracting all the monsters in the area. On the other side, Bota and Lita managed to escape from the room through the pipes and arrived at a balcony where they could see Cona. Cona led all the monsters to the Union's most powerful weapon, his fire cannon. When she gave the order, all the monsters were burned alive, and everyone began to celebrate. Now the children were desperate, and Bota had no idea where to hide. The Union Busan was huge, but they didn't know where to look. Suddenly, in the plaza, the old woman who sold seeds to the protagonist was being judged because she hadn't paid her taxes in over 3 months. Now she would be kicked out, leaving her adrift on a raft. Bota only thought that he wasn't that kind of harpoonist, at least not the one he was seeing. They weren't harpooners. Father was a true harpooner, and while Dohu shouted at the others that they were there to enforce the law, Bota comes out from crowd and tells them the truth, that they weren't harpooners who were protecting the town, but they were just miserable people hurting the town. The town protects itself, and in response Dohu starts hitting Bota and telling him that his father was a traitor. Everyone was surprised to hear that the boy was legendary harpoonist Tion's son. The Dohu made the mistake of hitting Lita, and Bota made a super move that sent him flying. Now the very angry Dohu pulls out a weapon to finish off Bota and aiming to shoot to Bota, but just then Cona appears there. She defends the children from Dohu. That's it for this part. Please subscribe this channel for upcoming parts. Hope we will meet soon in next part.